بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطاهرين. Dear brothers and sisters, Salamun alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Continuing from the last session, let's give one or two scenarios. So you have two people and they both commit an ethical vice, but with person A, that ethical vice leads to them committing a sin of the Sharia. With person B, they also committed the same ethical vice. It was incorporated within, but they didn't commit a sin of the Sharia. Here in this scenario, although person A will be punished in the hell of actions for that sin they committed, unless they repented, and person B won't be because they didn't commit that sin of the Sharia. When it comes to the hell of ethics, though, they will both suffer the same. So one shouldn't be complacent just because they haven't sinned a Sharia sin. All our lives, if we were told that it's only the wajibat and the muharramat, this is not the full story. And this sometimes leads to a complacency. Look at the whole picture. Read one or two books. Don't suffice with sound bites given in different sites of religious authorities. A sound bite is a sound bite. An extract from their speech is only an extract. Look at the whole speech. Don't suffice with the minimum in knowledge. Now, in medical ethics, if I can give one example, let's say we have two patients and two doctors, Dr. A and B, and the two patients are terminally ill. Dr. A wants to unplug patient A from the ventilator, from the ventilation machine. Wants to unplug, and then that would lead to the death of the patient because the patient is suffering a lot, and the patient said, "Oh, just end my life," and they unplug it. If they didn't unplug the ventilator, then a number of days or weeks would have been added. But the extreme pain, he says, "Look, let's not bother with this." With Dr. B, with patient B, they look at the terminally ill patient with all the suffering he or she is undergoing. Then they say, "Look, we're not even going to connect them to the ventilator. We won't connect them." That will also lead patient B to die earlier. You've accelerated their death. But you, because of the extreme pain that the person's undergoing, you want to free them earlier. They may die in 2 or 3 days' time. Two scenarios here. And the family members in the second scenario tell you that, "Look, don't let him suffer more than what he's already suffering." Here, in these two scenarios, when you look at it from a Sharia point of view, the religious authority may tell you that the one who unplugs, it's a sin. But the one who doesn't place them on the machine in the first place, it doesn't have to be a sin. Okay? Because the pain is a lot and the machine may not help too much, it may not extend their lives for a significant period. So they say there's no duty to put them on the machine. But the doctor who unplugs from the machine, that's a sin according to the Sharia. But the other one, in the other scenario, just leaving the patient as he or she is and not connecting them to the machine, it's not a sin. Okay, that's from the angle of the Sharia. Because the Sharia look at actions. in scenario A, there's something you're doing and it's a sin. It's a sin. In scenario B, you're not doing anything. Okay? And therefore, it's not a sin, especially under that context, in the context I gave. And therefore, with the first scenario, they're creating a hell of actions for themselves. With the second scenario, since it doesn't qualify as a sin, you're not creating a hell of action for yourself. However, with both scenarios, both doctors, their soul is contaminated with the hell of ethics. Because ethics says you have to do your best to save this patient, even if it means them extending their lives for 2 or 3 days. You have to do your best for them to continue. This is what the hell of ethics dictate, not a secular hell of ethics, what Islam says. Because in Islam, when they look at the person and the person's best interests, the person's best interest doesn't lie in this world. It lies in this world and the hereafter. The suffering one undergoes in a terminal illness, that suffering purifies your sins. It's a means of you being more and more purified before you enter the hereafter. A Muslim doctor is doing an injustice if they want to accelerate your death, because then they won't be working in your best interests. That's the Islamic oath. You have to work in the best interests of the person, the patient, but the patient, the best interests of him or her lies in the hereafter too. That suffering enables them to have a more easier, facilitates their transition into the hereafter. But if you accelerate their death and unplug them, or don't help them to live longer, okay, you are doing an injustice. It may not be haram according to the Sharia, but the hell of ethics would say you are polluted with this ethical vice. We shouldn't, just because a patient is suffering, we shouldn't just say, let's forget about treating them. Okay, so even if it's a day, they will live longer for a day. We have to do our best. But if it's substantiated before you that they're going to die today or tonight, irrespective of whether I put them on the machine or not, that's okay. So, during the day or the night, so you have a 12-hour time period. But if you know you can extend their life for a day, 24 hours or more, you have to do your best. The reason is because we believe in ajalum musamma, the decreed time, the decreed term. There's a decreed term for death. There's also a conditional term for death. But everyone has a decreed term, but we may not all reach it. The doctor's duty is that one has to always assume that this isn't the decreed term. So you have to keep on making an effort to extend their life. They have to always presume that the decreed term, the ajala musamma, has not reached yet. The conditional term is when certain things happen which acts as a barrier for you to reach your decreed term. But the doctor has to always assume or presume that the decreed term has not come for this patient, so they always extend. It's in the patient's best interest to reach their decreed term. And so look at here in these two scenarios, both doctors are contaminated. Both doctors are going to experience that hell of ethics. And that's why being a doctor is a very difficult profession. I don't want to give a soundbite here, but most doctors are creating a hell of ethics for themselves. There's no doubt about it. And they have to really evaluate themselves very carefully, especially those where they're working for monetary reasons. not for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay. So you see, there we have two scenarios which kind of emphasize the importance of the hell of ethics. Also, we have a hadith that when you want to marry a spouse to be, don't look at the excessive prayers that they do. Don't look at the excessive fasts that they do. Don't look at how many times they've gone to Hajj. Look at, then the traditions list 2 or 3 noble ethical traits. Look at how well do they keep their promises. Look at how well do they safe keep that which is entrusted to them temporarily. This is what you have to look at. These are the noble ethical traits. These are the precursor to the actions of the Sharia. If you're failing here, that would be a question mark whether you should choose that spouse. And these are the ethical traits. The traditions say don't look at the excessive prayers. So when you have 2 people that you're considering for a spouse, one of them commits themselves to the Sharia. Okay, they do the minimum required. The other does much more than the minimum. They do excessive prayers, excessive fasts. They have a very long beard, they have this, that. But they both commit themselves to the Sharia, but one of them more. But when it comes to the tariqah, one of them is abiding by the ethical traits, the aforementioned traits I mentioned. But whereas the other, they don't keep their promises. They're not good safekeepers. The traditions say you lean towards those who are succeeding in the ethical virtues. Look at their family. How are their family? How well are their ethical noble traits established in the family? And so on and so forth. So even in marriage we see this discussion having importance. Okay, inshallah we'll stop there, and in the next session we'll start the commentary to supplication number 24. These are supplications which were given to me. Originally they asked me to give 10 15-minute speeches and the 10 different supplications. I told them I need much more time. Then they gave me 5, but I think we're only going to cover 2 at the end. This is the second one. The 5 they gave me, this is the second, which is supplication number 24 or number 25, I can't recall now. And inshallah we'll go through this in the next session. Wa sallallahu ala Muhammad wa alihi.